Back with another video. Today's video is another episode of Every Album Ranked. As you can tell by the title, I will be ranking all the albums by Metallica. I've already reviewed each of these albums, and now it's time for me to rank them all from worst to best. Whereas this will exclude both official and unofficial bootlegs, as well as tribute albums, even though there's only one Metallica tribute album. Just as a heads up, this does not reflect anyone else's opinion, it is only my personal opinion. With that out of the way, let's get on with the list. Starting off the list is Saint Anger from 2003. This is known for being the most hated album by Metallica, although it does have a minority of defenders. Personally, I found this album to be mediocre. I don't hate this album, but it sure left a lot to be desired. This is also the only Metallica album to not have an official bassist, and producer Bob Rock filled in as the bassist until Robert Trujillo joined in 2003. The 20th anniversary of this album will be later this year. I don't know if Metallica will do anything to celebrate, but we'll have to wait and see. Now, moving up, we have Reload from 97. This is essentially the second part of what could have been a double album, but the band found it to be difficult recording so many songs for a double album. Because of that, Load and Reload were released as separate albums. Now, the next album on the list is Load from 96. Even though Reload is heavier than its predecessor, I feel that Load does some things better. It was an unusual decision for the band to incorporate some country elements into some of the songs, but I think it worked out just fine in the end. Moving up, we have Beyond Magnetic from 2011. It's essentially the material that couldn't be crammed into Death Magnetic due to space limitations. Of course, Death Magnetic and Beyond Magnetic were recorded simultaneously, but they were split into two separate records. It's fair to say this was the second Metallica record to be produced by Rick Rubin. Up next, we have Garage Inc. from 98. This is a collection of covers that Metallica recorded between the 80s until 98. Many of the covers in question were released as B-sides, and the existence of this album saves me the trouble of having to track down specific versions of the studio albums. I really wish more artists would release compilations of B-sides and rarities. Next album on the list is the Black Album from 91. This is the most successful album by Metallica and their first album to be produced by Bob Rock, who would continue working with the band until Saint Anger. I would argue that Enter Sandman contributed to the success of this album since it is the band's most popular song, and they typically play it at the end of their live shows. Next on the list is Hardwired to Self-Destruct from 2016. This is the first Metallica album to have Greg Feidelman credited as a producer, even though he has worked with the band before. Now, the band took some cues in their previous work when making this album. If you've seen my review, then you'll know that I actually have the 3-disc deluxe version. Yeah, you can see right there. Now, this is also the band's first album to be released on Blackened Recordings, which is their own record label. Next album on the list is S&M 2 from 2020. It's the band's second time working with the San Francisco Symphony Orchestra, as well as their first time venturing into symphonic metal since since 99. Even though it's not as good as the first S&M, it's still a very good album. Moving up, we have S&M from 99. This was the very last Metallica album to have Jason Newsted on bass before his departure in 2001. In my review of S&M 2, I found it to be almost as good as this album right here. Hearing Metallica venture into symphonic metal for once is very interesting, and the orchestration works out very well with the songs. Same goes for S&M 2, because working with the San Francisco Symphony Orchestra was a great idea. Only time will tell if there will ever be an S&M 3. And next on the list, we have Death Magnetic from 2008. This Metallica's first album to be, this is their first album with Robert Trujillo as their bassist, and their first record to be produced by Rick Rubin. This album had Metallica return to their thrash metal roots. Now, I always considered this album to be a major improvement over Saint Anger by a long shot. I may feature this album in a future video about the best albums of the 2000s. This album's 15th anniversary is going to be this year. Both this album and Beyond Magnetic are the only two Metallica records to be released on Warner Records. Moving forward, we have Kill 'Em All from '83. This is the band's debut album and essentially popularized the whole thrash metal genre. This album will be celebrating its 40th anniversary this year. We'll have to wait and see what the band has in store for that. Next on the list is Ride the Lightning from '84. Not only is this the band's second album, but it's also their second and final album released on Megaforce Records. I always thought this album was better than its predecessor. It's also their first album to have involvement from Flemming Rasmussen. We're almost at the end, and the second best Metallica album is Master of Puppets from '86. This is the band's first album released on Elektra Records. Sadly, this is also the band's last album to feature Cliff Burton on bass before his untimely death on September 26, '86. This is some of Metallica's best work, but there is one album of theirs I think is even better. Yeah, this is it. My number one pick for the best Metallica album is And Justice for All from '88. Most people seem to choose between this and Master of Puppets as the best Metallica album. This album did get more political than the band's previous work, and was their first time touching upon progressive metal. It's also their first album to have Jason Newsted on bass. I stated in my review that I plan on including this in a video on the best albums of the '80s. The album's 35th anniversary is going to be this year. I bet Metallica will do something to celebrate. And that does it for my rankings for the albums by Metallica. I know that not everyone is going to agree with my rankings, and that's fine because we all have our preferences. Yes, I know that I excluded Lulu. I do have that album, and I will review it at a later date. At the time of making this video, we're less than 3 months away from the release of Metallica's next album, 72 Seasons. You know damn well I'm going to review that. If you want to hear my full thoughts on these albums, I'll include links to my reviews in the description. Now's the part where I question you. What do you think of my rankings for the albums by Metallica? How would you rank their albums? What's your favorite album of theirs? Which one is your least favorite? Let me know in the comments. If you liked the video, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Be sure to press the notification bell to notify future videos. Thanks for watching. I'll be back soon with another video.